Population explosion means the alarming and rapid rate of increase in population. Causes of population explosion. 1. High birth rate. High birth rate is a major cause responsible for the rapid growth of population. In India, although the birth rate has declined from 45.8 per thousand during the period 1891 to 1900 to about 25.8 per thousand in 2001, it is still considered to be substantially high. This shows that the birth rate has not come down considerably in spite of the increase in the widespread propaganda of family planning, family welfare programs and population education campaigns. 2. Low death rate. The phenomenal fall in the death rate in recent years is another important factor that has contributed to the rapid increase in population. The death rate in India is about 8.5 per thousand in 2001. Due to advancement in medical science, dreadful and chronic diseases such as smallpox, parents in work instead of going to school and thus prove to be an asset for the family. Every additional child will become an earning member and thus supplement the family income. 6. Standard of living. People whose standard of living is low tend to have more children because an additional child is considered as an asset rather than a liability. Since a majority of the population is uneducated, they are unable to understand the need for family planning. They are unaware that a smaller size of family will help them enjoy a better standard of living. 7. Illiteracy. A major part of the population, about 60%, in India is either illiterate or has the minimum education. This leads them to accept minimal work in which they cannot even support themselves. Unemployment and underemployment further lead to poverty. Moreover, due to the prevalence of higher rate of illiteracy, there is widespread ignorance in the form of social customs and beliefs like early marriage and preference for a male child. As a result, there is high rate of population growth in the country. Population explosion as an obstacle to economic development. India is facing the situation of population explosion. Although we need more labor supply for our economic development, it is also true that if our population keeps on rising, the process of economic development will be affected. The rising population in India affects economic development in the following ways. 1. Food shortage. If the population of India goes on rising, and there is no proportionate increase in agricultural production, the country will face a serious food problem. 2. Burden of unproductive consumers. The greater the increase in population, the greater is the number of children and old persons. Children and old persons consume without them making any contribution to output. The increasing number of children and old people increase the burden in terms of more requirements of nutrition, medical care, public health and education that go unattended to a large extent. 3. Reduction in national and per capita income. The fast-growing population retards the average growth rate of national income and per capita income. This is because whatever is added to the national income is consumed by ever-increasing population. 4. Low savings and investment. The most serious consequences of a rapid increase in population is that it reduces the capacity to save and invest. The national income and per capita income in India is very low to leave any margin for the people to save. Further, there will be a fall in effective demand as the people's purchasing power is low. Rapid population growth thus makes it difficult to increase the rate of savings, which determines the possibility of achieving higher productivity and incomes in a country. 5. Reduction in capital formation. Capital formation is very essential for the economic development of a country, particularly for a developing country like India. Capital formation depends upon saving and investment. This is not possible when there is a rapid growth of population, which results in more unemployment and underemployment. Thus, the fast-growing population affects the capital formation in the country adversely. 6. Unemployment and underemployment. Rising population aggravates the problem of unemployment. The labor force also increases with the increase in population, and this increased labor force is not fully absorbed due to lack of employment opportunities. Therefore, there are more unemployed and underemployed people. 7. Loss of women's labor. Rapid and frequent childbirths make a large number of women unable to take part in productive activity for longer periods. This is a waste of human resource, and it retards economic development. 8. Low labor efficiency. The increasing population adversely affects the national income and the per capita income. Due to this, the people have a lower standard of living, which makes them less efficient. This hinders the rapid development of the country. 9. More expenditure on social welfare programs. A rise in population increases the number of children. This would demand more social expenditure on medical care, public health, family welfare, education, and housing, etc. 10. Agricultural backwardness. The increase in population has led to uneconomic holdings through subdivision and fragmentation of land holdings in India. The size of holding is so small that mechanized farming is not possible. Although some successful efforts towards development of agriculture have been made under the 5-year plans, agricultural production still falls short of the requirements of the population and the agro-industries in the country. 11. Underdeveloped industries. The rapid growth of population adversely affects industrial development. This is the reason why neither the cottage and small-scale industries nor large-scale industries could develop adequately in the country. Both big and small industries require adequate capital, whereas the rate of capital formation is low in India. Public investment in India is insufficient for the industrial development of the country. 12. Financial burden on government. Rapid increase in population is a financial strain to the government. The resources have to be spent on launching poverty alleviation programs and social welfare schemes. This includes provision of good drinking water, housing, sanitary, health and medical facilities, in order to increase the standard of living of the people. If the population is controlled, then the government can spend on more productive purposes which would increase the national and per capita income and thereby
at 21 years, and for girls at 18 years should be strictly followed in real life. 6. Legal steps. Strict laws must be made and enforced to check early marriages and polygamy. 7. Family planning. This is the most important measure to check the rapid growth of population. Family planning means limiting the size of the family. The family planning campaign should be a national movement. Education about family planning must be made common. People must be made aware of the different methods of birth control. Theories of population. Malthusian theory of population. The Malthusian theory of population is the most well-known theory on population in economics. Malthus pointed out that an accelerated increase in population would outweigh the increase in food production. This would have an adverse impact on the development of an economy. This theory is explained in the following propositions. 1. The rate of growth of population is limited by the availability of the means of subsistence, i.e. food. If the means of subsistence increase, population also increases unless it checked. 2. Population increases at a faster rate than food production. In other words, while population increases in a geometric progression, food production increases in an arithmetic progression. 3. The preventive and positive checks are the two measures to keep the population on the level with the available means of subsistence. The first proposition states that the size of population is determined by the availability of food production. In other words, greater production can sustain a larger population. If food production does not increase to match the rate of growth of population, it will lead to poverty. The want of food would result in deaths, and thereby automatically limit the population. If the food production increases, the people will tend to increase their family size. This will lead to more demand for food, so the availability of food per person will diminish. This will lead to a lower standard of living. The second proposition states that population would increase at a geometrical progression, i.e., in the ratio of 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, etc., but food production would increase at an arithmetical progression, i.e., in the order of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. If population increases, there will be a burden on land, which is limited. As a result, there will be diminishing returns. This will lead to a decrease in the output per worker, and a corresponding decrease in the availability of food per person. The imbalance between the population growth and food supply would lead to a bare subsistence of living, misery and poverty.
Progression, i.e. in the ratio of 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, etc., but food production would increase at an arithmetical progression, i.e. in the order of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc. If population increases, there will be a burden on land, which is limited. As a result, there will be diminishing returns. This will lead to a decrease in the output per worker, and a corresponding decrease in the availability of food per person. The imbalance between the population growth and food supply would lead to a bare subsistence of living, misery and poverty. This imbalance is corrected by two checks, namely preventive checks and positive checks. Preventive checks are those checks applied by and to reduce the population. The preventive checks include late marriage, self-restraint and other similar measures applied by people to limit the family. Positive checks affect population growth by increasing death rate. The positive checks on population are many and include every cause either from vice or misery which helps to shorten the lifespan. Common diseases, plagues, wars, famines, unwholesome occupations, excess labor, exposure to the seasons, extreme poverty, bad nursing of children are a few examples for positive checks. Malthus thus recommended that the preventive checks can be used by mankind to avoid misery, or else the positive checks would come into operation. As a result, there will be a balance between population and food production. Theory of optimum population. The modern theory of optimum population brings out the relationship between changes in population and the consequent changes in per capita income. Modern economists such as Sedgwick, Kennan, Dalton, and Robbins have propagated this theory. Optimum population means the ideal population relative to the natural resources, stock of capital, equipment, and state of technology. There will be an ideal size of population at which per capita output, or real income per head, will be the highest. In other words, optimum population is that level of population at which per capita output is the highest. A country is said to be underpopulated if the population is less than the optimum, and overpopulated if the population is more than the optimum. Illustration. Let us assume that the availability of natural resources, capital, equipment, and state of technology remain fixed in a country. The population is assumed to be small relative to these resources. When population increases, the labor force in a country also increases. As additional labor is combined with fixed amounts of these resources, the per capita output will initially rise due to greater of specialization and more efficient use of natural and capital resources available. As population increases, a point will be reached when capital and natural resources will be fully exploited, and output will be the highest. Thus, the level of population at which the per capita output is the highest is known as optimum population. Beyond this point, if the population increases, the country will become overpopulated, and the per capita output will start decreasing, because there are more women/men in relation to natural resources in the economy. Thus, the given amount of capital and natural resources have to be shared among a large number of workers, resulting in smaller amount of equipment, materials, and natural resources available per person to work with. Thus, the average productivity declines. With the fall in the output per head, per capita income and standard of living of the people also decline. Overpopulation leads to a low standard of living, disguised unemployment and food shortage. Both underpopulation and overpopulation have shortcomings. It is optimum population with the highest per capita output which is best suited for a country. The theory of demographic transition. The demographic transition brings out the relationship between fertility and motility, i.e., between the birth rate and the death rate. Birth rate refers to the number of births occurring per 1,000 in a year. Death rate refers to the number of deaths occurring per 1,000 in a year. This theory explains the changes in these rates as a consequence of economic development. This theory points out that there are three distinct stages of population growth. Stage 1. High birth rate and death rate. In the first stage, the country is backward and less developed. Agriculture will be the main occupation of the people, and primitive mode of cultivation will be used. The standard of living of the people will be low. This stage is characterized by high birth rate and high death rate. The high death rate is due to poor diets, improper sanitation, and lack of proper medical facilities. Birth rate is high on account of widespread illiteracy, ignorance of family planning techniques, early marriages, social beliefs, customs, and attitudes of the people. In this stage, the rate of growth of population is not high since high birth rate is offset by the high death rate and the population growth stagnates. Stage 2. high birth rate and low death rate. As a country advances, it might result in increase in industrial activity, creating more employment opportunities. This will raise the national and per capita income of the people, thereby increasing their standard of living. The economy reaches the second stage of high birth rate and low death rate. The advancement in science and technology will result in the availability of better medical facilities. The eradication of many epidemics and dangerous diseases, and better sanitary conditions reduce the incidence of disease and death. The birth rate still remains high due to the resistance to change and the long-established customs and beliefs. Thus there is an imbalance between high birth rate and low death rate, resulting in high population growth, and the country witnesses population explosion. Stage 3. Low birth rate and death rate. Economic development leads to change in the structure of the economy from an agrarian to a partially industrialized one. With the increase in industrialization, people migrate from rural to urban areas, and there is a change in the attitude of the people. With the spread of education, people prefer small families in order to increase the standard of living. Thus the birth rate is reduced. Implementation of better medical facilities, control of disease and public sanitation result in low death rate. During this third stage of low birth and death rates, the growth of population tends to be stable. Almost all countries have passed through these three stages. Demographic transition of population growth. The three stages of demographic transition are shown in Figure 2.2. Census. The term census can be defined as the process of collecting, compiling, evaluating, analyzing and publishing the demographic, economic and social data relating to all persons in a country, or a well-delimited part of a country at a specified time. Census of population in India was taken in 1872 and then in 1881. From then onwards, the census is taken once in 10 years. The latest census was taken in 2001. Census is very important to know. 1. The rate of growth of population. 2. The changes in the distribution of the population. Census is useful for economic planning and for implementing welfare schemes and measures. The use of population census. The population census provides comprehensive details of India's population characteristics. The details recorded in the population census are as follows. A. Total population. 32 BCDEFGH. Sex composition. Rural versus urban population. Age composition. Density of population. Literacy rate. Urbanization. Occupational pattern. Characteristics of Indian population. India accounts for about 2.4% of the total world area, but has to support about 16.84% of the world population. The population in our country has been growing very rapidly from 238.5 million in 1901 to 1027 million in 2001. Thus, during 1 century, i.e. 100 years, the population of India has increased by nearly 788.5 million people. This order of increase is really alarming and threatening to the whole development process in India. Population growth in India, or India's population growth during the 20th century, can be classified into 4 distinct phases as follows. Percentage. Census. Nature of growth. 1901, 1921, 1921, 1951, 1951, 1981, 1981, 2001, 0.19, 1.22, 2.14, 1.80. Stagnant population, steady growth, rapid high growth with definite signs of slowing down. The growth of population was slow up to 1921, but after this year it increased significantly. It is for this reason that 1921 is described as the year of the Great Divide. After 1921, India passed through successively all the phases of demographic transition, and now has entered into the fifth phase, which is characterized by rapidly declining fertility. Rate of growth of population is a function of birth rate and death rate. The increase in population in India can be explained by the variations in birth and death rates. The birth rate in India declined from 49.2 per thousand in 1901 to 25.8 in 2001. In the same period, the death rate has fallen from 42.6 per thousand to 8.5 per thousand. The natural growth rate during 1901 to 1911 was 6.6. Birth rate minus death rate during a given period, whereas it was 17.3 in 1991 to 2001. The increase in natural growth rate explains that the fall in death rate was more than the fall in birth rate. The fall in death rates were due to the development of medical facilities and control of epidemics and diseases. This is a very healthy sign of development. The census results of birth rate shows that the family planning programs have to target the country, especially the rural areas, in a much more effective manner, so that birth rate can still be reduced. The National Population Policy, NPP-2000, recently adopted by the Government of India, states that the long-term objective is to achieve a stable population by 2045, at a level consistent with the requirements of sustainable development and environment protection. Population policy. India was the first developing country to adopt a population policy and to launch a nationwide family planning program in 1952. The policy refers to the efforts made by any government to control and change the population structure. National Population Policy 2000. The National Population Policy, NPP 2000, has the immediate objective of addressing the unmet needs of contraception, health infrastructure, health personnel, and integrating service delivery for basic reproductive and child health care. It also lays emphasis on the medium-term objective of bringing total fertility rates to replacement level by 2010. A total fertility rate of 2.1 is known as replacement level fertility. The policy's long-term objective is to stabilize population by 2045. A National Commission on Population, presided over by the Prime Minister, Chief Ministers of all states and other dignitaries as the members, has been constituted to oversee and review the policy. NPP 2000. Implementation. Similar to the National Commission, state-level commissions presided over by the respective state chief ministers have also been set up with the same objective of ensuring implementation of the policies. Measures to achieve a stable population. The National Population Policy has listed the following measures to achieve a stable population by 2045. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Reduction of infant mortality rate. IMR below 30 per 1,00,000 live births. Reduction of maternal mortality rate. MMR to below 100 per 1,00,000 live births. Universal immunization. To achieve 80% deliveries in regular dispensaries, hospitals and medical institutions with trained staff. Access to information containing AIDS, prevention and control of communicable diseases. Incentive to adopt a child small family norm. Strict enforcement of Child Marriage Restraint Act and Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act. Raising the age of marriage of girls from 18 to 20. A special reward for women who marry after 21. The action plan of the program includes the following. Education to be made free and compulsory. 2, 3. Registration of marriage, pregnancy to be made compulsory along with births and deaths. The government hopes to achieve the objective of population stabilization by 2040.